What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and of course my they-them royalty. My name is Ashton Gene Lewis. This is the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. If you guys don't know what I do in this iteration of it, maybe you tuned in the past and you're wondering what that stupid guy on the internet is up to. Actually, you're more than likely wondering what that brilliant guy on the internet is up to. I'm trying to be nicer to myself, because I am awesome. See, we're working on it. Progress. I am hearing feedback in my headphones, so that's good. I'm going to close the stream, so I don't know if you guys heard that duplicate audio, but who cares? Anyway, week 8 of the NFL season has come and gone. What the hell? Is this real? No, my bad. Some crazy fucking Eagles fan on the internet. Sorry, on my personal Twitter account, I follow these two Eagles fans who just so happen to be very, very conventionally attractive. They followed me on Instagram. They used to listen to my podcast pretty consistently, and when I was posting it consistently, because I used to talk about the Eagles, they both lift weights. So we both were like, we bonded over the fact they were like, we lift weights, and I predicted that the Eagles were going to win the Super Bowl one year, and they ended up going to the NFC Championship game. I used to talk about the Eagles before they blew up and became the powerhouse that they are right now. Like for instance, when back when I saw the vision, essentially, with the Eagles, and I used to talk about it all the time, and people thought I was crazy. I saw Nick Sirianni figure out how to make the Eagles into the run team that they truly were at their very core. At their heart, they were always a run team. They're always a running-based team, and he figured that out after a bye week a couple years ago when they played against the Saints, and they were able to come back in the game by running the ball up and down the field. So, anyway, what was I going to say? Oh, right. I'm doing my podcast. I have a show that I do here. It's called the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. It is correct. Everything above me. I was trying to work. The reason I let the theme song run so long is because I was posting on Twitter. And I apparently need to work on posting on Facebook and Instagram because we were getting pretty good traction there. And then we got half the number of people we normally get that watch the pod. And I think some of that maybe with the timing, because I did record 2 hours later than I normally do, because that's how long it took me to get through watching all the games. My time management last week was terrible. My time management this week was actually really good. I just started the pod late because I was busy playing a stupid game. Anyway, you guys know the drill. If you don't know the drill, don't worry. I will explain it. The drill is this. Ashton Gene Lewis, have watched every single play from insert the week of the NFL season that we are currently in, because I'm doing this all the way up until the Super Bowl. Well, obviously it wouldn't work for the week of the Super Bowl, because it would mean that I just watched the Pro Bowl, which, by the way, they're making it the same week as the Super Bowl. It's about time, because 2 weeks of media coverage of the Super Bowl is actually one of the reasons that I kind of tune out from sports television for about a week before the Super Bowl. Like, just in general, I actually, it was one of the reasons I stopped watching ESPN as much as I used to, was because NFL media and anybody who had money invested in the Super Bowl had to cover the Super Bowl like there was something actually happening every single day. And they weren't even doing like cool packages on each of the players that were on the team. Like, for instance, I think it's pretty easy layup content, but I know it's super controversial now. February is Black History Month, and every single year, I promise you can find a story about a player who went to an HBCU that is on a Super Bowl team every single year, because that's how prevalent HBCU football players are. Like, for instance, I think the Eagles, when they went last year, had 3 guys. I'm sorry. There were 5 guys in total, and 2 of them were on the Eagles, and 3 of them were actually in the secondary for the Chiefs, which is kind of crazy. Go back and look it up. It was like Joshua Williams and Brian Cook both went to HBCUs. Joshua Williams, I don't know if it was like grades or something like that or whatever, but he went to like Fayetteville State. which is in obviously North Carolina or whatever. But his story is crazy because he was like a 6'3" corner that ran like a 4.3 at the combine and somehow ended up at an HBCU when it was all said and done. But he's in the NFL now, and I think his rookie year, and he's gone to the Super Bowl twice. So he's got a Super Bowl ring and he's got a Super Bowl loss because he lost last year. But whatever. Stuff like that, like easy content, man. Like you could do a full-on interview package. Like you can treat like these players who typically don't get a ton of shine that do really cool stuff in the offseason. Like Jared Nandi. He's been on the Chiefs like forever, and when he won the Super Bowl the first year around, because he was there when the first go around for the Chiefs happened, and he helped them win the Super Bowl early on in his career. He like helped a bunch of puppies get adopted. Like he took the momentum of the media coverage for him winning the Super Bowl to go to like a shelter and make sure that a bunch of dogs got adopted. He paid for like adoption fees for some crazy amount of dogs. Anyway, that should have been on television instead of in a story that I read about the Super Bowl. But we all got to sit there and watch Stephen A. Smith and a bunch of people that we all like. We can say we like Ryan Clark and a lot of other people who were on ESPN. But I will say the objective of debating constantly really dumb questions, because not everything has to be a debate. Sometimes you can just tell a cool story about a person who's done something amazing, and maybe that's enough to entertain people, but usually it's not. Whatever. Maybe I'm whack, which honestly, that would actually make a lot more sense. Anyway, we're 7 minutes into the podcast, and I haven't even explained the premise of it. If this is your first time checking out the Broke Boy Sports Podcast, congratulations, you're in for a treat. I will say, a little tough. It's a tough week for it to be your first week, because it was a tough week of football out there for all the football fans. Anyway, week 8, every single week, we break down every single game into different categories. We start off with the snooze fest games, which are the games that bored me personally the most. I will also explain the context under which I watch football. I've been watching football for going on, I want to say like 2 decades now. I worked in sports media for 10 years, which is crazy to say, because I told myself when I was like a sophomore in high school that this is the kind of stuff I would be doing, but now I'm doing it like as a hobby, obviously not as my career. But I did work in sports media. I was a play-by-play broadcaster, a color analyst, and all kinds of other stuff like that. Covered high school sports, eventually made my way to working at the radio station that I grew up listening to as a kid, which was kind of crazy. And then worked there for 2 years, then moved on to work for Master Control in Disney and the Walt Disney Company, helping with their sports networks. And then one day, I actually was on ESPN The Ocho as a broadcaster for one day, which is probably the peak of my entire sports broadcasting career. Kind of crazy. Anyway, that's my background, plus like the endless amount of hours I've spent watching football. I played Division I football for like a season in college. It was not good. I played left guard. I'd never played football up until that moment that I went to college. And that's pretty much my deal. That's my qualifications to talk about football after watching every single play. I will say I have a massive leg up over most of you because I watched every single play that was played. A lot of people that you watch on TV, a lot of people like your friends and stuff like that, they don't watch all the games. They watch the games that are fun to them. Unfortunately, I've been cursed with the ability to be able to watch all the games, and unfortunately, even more so, the desire to watch all the games. Whatever. Moving on. We break the games down into snooze fest categories, which are the categories are snooze fest, which is the most boring games. We have heartbreakers. These are games that have some kind of underlying storyline that goes along with it, and the score or the result or something that happened in the game actually kind of maybe split the team, broke the team for the remainder of the season, but more than likely bummed out all the fans, and then of course hurt the players the most, because losing, you're talking about people who grew up competing at every single phase of their life, and losing hurts a lot more than winning feels good for a good chunk of dudes who are in the NFL. But I move on to the other category. That is the oh my category. It's supposed to be George Takei from Star Trek, not some creepy voice. But yeah, the oh my category, the games that have interesting results. Sometimes it's an upset. Sometimes it is a score that was a lot closer than it should have been. Sometimes it is the pathway to the score that is most important. Like, for instance, earlier this season, we had the Ravens who played against the Browns, and the game was like 17-9 until the fourth quarter, and then somehow the Ravens scored 20-something points in one quarter of football. And honestly, it was in 12 minutes of football, which is crazy. But whatever. I digress. And then the final category is the this is what we're here for category. It is the games that I personally believe that created fans of football. These are the games that are the reason that you, a football fan, is watching this stupid podcast with this really smart guy on the internet talking about football. It's the reason that people go and buy random jerseys in countries that don't consistently even get NFL games, right? It's the reason that, the NFL is going to Spain, I think, next week. The Miami Dolphins are going to Spain I'll put it out here, hand up. You guys know the drill. Some of you guys know the deal. I post this after Thursday Night Football the following week. I already saw Thursday Night Football, Dolphins-Ravens. Pretty sure Mike McDaniels is getting fired tomorrow morning. Or later today, because it is 2:40 in the morning right now on a Friday. On Halloween, look, you want to talk about relief? You get fired from a job that you don't necessarily care that much about. Well, I take that back. Mike McDaniel, historically, from what I understand, actually cares too much, and it's part of the problem. So, he more than likely is getting fired. Getting fired on Halloween is pretty tough, but he will get to spend Halloween with his kids and his wife. And also all of his friends are going to be calling him by the time Saturday morning rolls around for him to come help coach their team. So, I put it in the group chat. I put money out on the Packers because their offense is fine, but, they have Josh Jacobs and stuff like that. I had another friend who said, get the game back together. 49ers get Robert Salah on defensive coordinator, and then weasel somehow Mike McDaniel back in the OC. We'll see. He was run game coordinator when he was with the 49ers, so more than likely it is going to be a happy ending for Mike McDaniels the second, and I think maybe that's what's going to hurt the most for Stephen Ross when he finally fires Mike McDaniel, knowing that he is going to get a phone call from one of his buddies who understands him as a coach and is going to do great things with him. So, yeah. Fingers crossed. Real long shot on this one. Mike McDaniel comes to Houston. Don't know how. I know D'Amico and Mike used to be on the same staff at some point. It'd be really cool if he could find his way to Houston, Texas. Anyway, Houston fans are probably so dumb that they think that Mike actually sucks at his job. Whatever. Moving on. Those are the four categories. Here's how the games broke down this week for me personally, and my whole goal is to do this in less than an hour. So this is the 14-minute mark of this podcast. So in an hour and 14 minutes, we should be done on this show. Let's take it from the top. The snooze fest categories. I'm going to tell you this right now. I didn't write any notes for Chargers Vikings. I watched it twice because I watched it live when it aired, and then I watched the condensed game replay after the fact. And I can tell you this much. There's not much to take away from this except J.J. McCarthy cannot come back soon enough. Most of the game was spent about speculation as to why J.J. hasn't come back, because he's got like this weird... He had a high ankle sprain, so you don't know what his injury situation is. And so it's Al Michaels. Al Michaels is kind of... Look, man, there's nothing wrong with Al Michaels mentally. Al Michaels is the old dude, and he's going to say whatever the hell he wants to say. That's why he kept making all those jokes about the overhitting as the back end of the game was coming around. He does not give a flying fuck what you think about gambling, just because that whole situation with the NBA is going down and more. And, I mean, obviously the NFL's had, like, Jameson Williams got suspended for, like, half a year for gambling, bro. Like, but anyway, moving on. Al Michaels does not care. So he spent most of the broadcast peppering Kirk Herbstreit with questions about J.J. McCarthy, as opposed to kind of like describing what was going on. But if you didn't watch it, the big takeaway from this is that the Vikings don't have a choice but to start J.J. McCarthy next week, or they're going to start another rookie. I forget what his name is. I remember I looked it up when they were in London and playing against the Steelers, and Carson hurt his shoulder then as well. By the way, in case you didn't know, the thing that kept happening throughout this game, Carson's shoulder kept popping in and out of place. He had a brace on it, and basically every time he got hit, which, by the way, happened a ton because the offensive line was not blocking all that well, the Chargers got Khalil Mack back, and they have To'o as well, who's been killing it this season more so than ever because he's just getting more opportunities to rush off the edge. The secondary for the Chargers is looking back to normal. They had a tough showing the previous week because they were going up against the Colts. A lot of people were like, "Yeah, that was pretty shameful for how the Colts played or how the Chargers played against the Colts." I will point this out: if you go use your eyes and you go watch any game the Colts have played this season, what they did to the Chargers is no different than what they did to everybody else. It was not about the Chargers defense playing poorly. It was about the Colts offense being literally the best offense that the Colts have ever had and possibly one of the best offenses in the history of the NFL. When this whole thing is all said and done, we'll see how far they can take it because it doesn't really, like, if you want to talk about by the numbers, they're on track to do some stuff that's never been done before. If you want to talk about, like, narrative stuff, obviously they have to win the Super Bowl to be classified as like one of the best offenses ever, but that would be stupid. Everything can't be whittled down to quantifying whether or not you were the team that ended up winning at the end of the season, because they could have the number one offense of all time statistically, and then Jonathan Taylor could get hurt in the AFC Championship game or something like that. Does that mean that they're not the best team, or does that mean that they weren't the best team the entire season? Whatever. Moving on. Carson Wentz kept popping his shoulder in and out of place, in and out of socket, kept putting it back in, kept his brace on, kept running in and out of the game, in pain, noticeable pain, grimacing pain. The thing, and I know there's probably a bunch of people who are like, why does he keep going in and out of the game? That's so dumb. He's just hurting himself, endangering himself even more. And I'm like, look, man, let's talk about the deep, dark thing that's going on here. What you saw on Thursday Night Football potentially is probably going to be Carson Wentz's last game as an NFL quarterback. Only time will tell if that is going to be the case, but considering the circumstances of how he even got to the point where he is starting for the Vikings, with, them having to trade away a bunch of players when it was all said and done, because at one point they had Daniel Jones. They just decided not to sign him to a $14 million contract. J.J. McCarthy was originally slated to be the starter, right? And then J.J. McCarthy gets hurt pretty early on, almost immediately into his starting position, and Carson Wentz comes in and he has to do his thing, right? That being said, looking at all the circumstances, and you add in damage to your shoulder, don't know what the extent of the damage is, having to get surgery, his season is over, and then having to take off for the rest of this season and maybe some of next year, like, what is the real chances that Carson Wentz is going to be, one, signed to another contract after this? Because there are going to be plenty of backup QBs. There are more backup QBs created every single year, and Carson Wentz is probably falling down the list of priorities, even considering what he did with his time as the backup QB, as the true starter out there. That may have been the final game of Carson Wentz's football career. It would now be pretty sad, but it is the reality of sports. At some point, the game tells you that you're done, or you tell you that you're done. And Carson Wentz, who knows, man? Maybe the game's going to tell him that he's done. I would believe that that's the final game that Carson Wentz plays. Obviously, you got to play till the wheels come off, because at some point, you're never going to be able to play again, right? So I respect anybody who keeps stepping it up, but there was a reason that he kept going in and out of the game despite knowing the circumstances that he was up against. The Chargers run away with this one. I think Justin Herbert had a total of like 4 touchdowns, which he's had a bunch of these games this season where his offense just been impeccable, but the defense just can't match it. The same pace happened versus the Colts, but the Chargers stay in contention for the AFC West. They're currently tied for second place with the Kansas City Chiefs. So them beating the Chiefs week 1 in Brazil, every week that passes, it is becoming more and more significant overall. Moving on, Kansas City Chiefs take on Washington Commanders. This game was a lot more exciting than a snooze fest. The first half of it was pretty dope. Marcus Mariota is the starting quarterback for this game, and I wrote this at the top of my notes. The Chiefs do not need help whooping your ass. A lot of teams know this and still help out the Chiefs by turning the ball over. The fourth play of this game was a Commanders reversal to Deebo Samuels. He pops it up in the air, and it gets intercepted by a defensive lineman for the Kansas City Chiefs. Strangely enough, this leads to no points. As a matter of fact, it leads to one of the best defensive drives I've seen out of the Commanders all season. They get a sack on the second play of the Chiefs drive after the interception, the second play of the Chiefs drive after the interception, and then it ends completely off of a Marcus Lattimore interception. You know, public enemy number one if you're a Washington Commanders fan. They hate Lattimore. I don't really know how to break it to them in the sense that Marcus is always going to be lined up against the number one wide receiver against any team. And when it comes down to the last couple of teams that they've played, those are some of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Like last week, he was lined up against CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, right? Those are two of the better wide receivers. Those are two top half of, and really in CeeDee Lamb's case, CeeDee Lamb's like a top 10, top 5 wide receiver in the NFL right now. And to sit here and be like, oh, you suck because you couldn't lock up CeeDee Lamb is crazy. But, you know, that's what fans are. That's why the NFL is a billion-dollar organization. A lot of people who don't think with their brains when they say things. The Commanders do it again after the offense comes up with 0 points off of the Marcus Lattimore interception. They get another stop on Patrick Mahomes, and they actually intercept Patrick Mahomes a second time, and it's from my guy Bobby Wagner, my guy. If you guys don't know, Bobby Wagner is my favorite NFL football player for a multitude of reasons, and I'll explain that when I'm not on the clock in terms of like breaking down these games and stuff like that. But after a dud of a drive from the Commanders on that one, the Chiefs actually do end up scoring. They realize that they remember one key thing: their offensive line is all of their starters, and the Commanders' defensive line is all of their backups, and they run them over. A vast majority of this game is going to come down to the simple fact that the Commanders couldn't get consistent pressure against Patrick Mahomes throughout this game. And then second, they couldn't stop the run due to the fact that the offensive line was able to get up to the second level, right? There was a ton of plays, and that actually was the resounding theme for most of week 9. The better teams had better offensive lines, and they were able to get up to the second level and disrupt linebackers and put them into the dirt, as opposed to a lot of other teams that were struggling to get like half or 2 seconds of clean pass blocking for their quarterbacks. But yeah, it was pretty crazy. This drive ends with Rashid Rice scoring a rushing touchdown, which is weird, but very Chiefs-like. And strangely enough, the Commanders respond like almost immediately on the following drive. They score a touchdown with Scary Terry, and there's 58 seconds left on the first half of left in the first half of this game. The benefits of investment in a backup QB cannot be exemplified enough by what we have seen from the Commanders. Marcus Mariota has actually looked better as it has gone on. The more opportunities gotten to start, even though the opponent has become more difficult, Marcus Mariota himself as a player is looking better overall. Like, for instance, this is the toughest opponent that he's had to score up against as the Commanders quarterback, and despite what the score will tell you, he actually played really well throughout the course of this game. The benefits of investing a backup QB is when your starters go down, you still have an actual legit chance to come up with some kind of point or some kind of chance to be able to win some of these games. Like, for instance, when Marcus played his first game, they played against the Raiders. He was able to go out there and get that easy win from them. Like, and you know, a lot of these teams, they have rookie quarterbacks who, you know, you don't know what's going to happen and when you put them in there. But Marcus is reliable, even if you're talking about he may be at the end of the line when it comes to like developing as a quarterback. But whatever. He's without a doubt, he without a doubt this week outplayed multiple starters. Marcus did. The game is 10-7 at halftime, which I'm sure shocked everybody. I'm sorry, 7-7 at halftime, which I'm sure shocked everybody looking at Monday Night Football. Don't worry. You don't have to be shocked for long. The Commanders' defense comes back to earth in the second half of this one. They're consistently asked to cover 5 different people who are really good in open space. So it's like Travis Kelce and his motion, crossing routes, all that kind of stuff like that. Plus Rashid Rice, plus Xavier Worthy, plus now Juju Smith-Schuster, who was good in his first stint with the Kansas City Chiefs, which is why they brought him back, right? Plus trying to figure out how to find the run fits to get Kareem Hunt down on the ground and Rashid Smith. And then at the time, Isaiah Pacheco. Isaiah actually gets hurt towards the end of this game, and that's probably the only blemish for the Kansas City Chiefs. Really, it's really a big bummer because, like, since he broke his leg, it's just not been the same. Like most human beings, you break your leg and you're a different person for a little while there, and you felt like maybe he was just they were giving him chances to be able to get back on track, and now he's back on IR, I think, off the top of my head. He's hurt for sure, and he's not going to be coming back anytime soon. He's missing, I think, like 3 weeks or something like that. It's the Commanders having a tough time defending all the pass options. Plus, they couldn't get Patrick Mahomes down on the ground. Like I said, it wasn't just the pass rush wasn't good enough. It was that Patrick Mahomes was able to bail out of the pocket cleanly and get even clearer viewpoints on where his receivers were. Plus, he was able to change the throwing angle to those receivers. So basically, defensive backs went from having really good coverage to being completely out of position based on where the ball was being thrown up, which is tough, especially because the Commanders played halfway decent defense in the NFL. They just are not consistently one of the better defenses up top, but they get cooked in the red zone because it feels like they run the same exact zone play when they get into the red zone, and maybe it's one of those things of like, you get into the red zone, know what you're going to be running. It just comes down to your ability to read what the other team is doing, so you don't even have to think about what the defensive call is. You need to think about where you're supposed to be doing and how you can disrupt the opponent's defense. Well, if you want to talk about people who are good at disrupting people and getting them off their spots, it is the Kansas City Chiefs. They spent a lot of time actually getting cooking my boy Bobby Wagner using wide receivers, which is absurd. There's not a linebacker in the NFL that one can square up with an NFL wide receiver and cover them for 3 to 4 seconds, let alone what they were asking with Bobby. Bobby was the lone linebacker over the middle of the field, and most of the time when he was in these situations where he was the nearest defender to a wide receiver catching the ball, the receiver had already had a head of steam because they got off the line completely untouched by a defender, so they weren't rerouted or anything like that. They were running full speed across because they know the second that they get behind Bobby, they were going to be able to get into a great angle to receive the ball. That happened with Rashid Rice one time. He got the ball all the way down to like the 4-yard line or something like that. And my biggest thing was like people on the internet talking about like Bobby's slow and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, every linebacker looks slow next to an NFL wide receiver. It happened last week because they used the same exact concept with the Cowboys to beat this same exact fucking zone that the Commanders run. And so that people were like, oh, look, Bobby's like running behind CeeDee Lamb. And I'm like, every linebacker in the NFL is going to be running behind CeeDee Lamb, you idiots. But yeah, that's pretty much what happened. They tore him apart in the second half, and it was tough. It was tough. The Commanders fall to a 3-game losing streak, and they are, I want to say, 3 games out of they're in 3rd place for the NFC East right now. So that's interesting. The Chiefs have won 3 straight games, and they are still only 2nd place in the AFC West. They're actually tied for 2nd place in the AFC West with their current record. So that's pretty funny. AFC West, crazy competitive. NFC East, very competitive too. Each week, like I said earlier, the Brazil game, it feels like so much is going to come down to what happened in Brazil in week 1 for the AFC West. It is so stupid. I think none of the personally, I don't believe any of the international games you should be allowed to play them in. You shouldn't be allowed to play divisional games overseas. That's just my personal opinion because they have so much sway on your season, and you just can't have a division come down to whether or not you felt like it can't come down to how well you adjusted to traveling from Kansas City, Kansas to Brazil, bro. Like, it can't come down to that kind of stuff, or how well you transition from Jacksonville, Florida to London. Like, you know what I mean? Whatever. Adversity, coach speak, you know the drill. Moving on, other games in the snooze fest category. The Titans showed up to play a football game, and the Colts ended up playing the football game in front of everybody else. They scored. The Colts have scored 38 points in back-to-back games. If they had scored just 2 more points, they would have scored 40 points they would have scored 40 points in half of the games that they have played this season, which is crazy. The Colts have not scored fewer than 31 points in the month of October. Jonathan Taylor almost pulled off a really cool record. If you notice, I'm not really talking about this game because I can tell you what happened, but it will sound like what I said in week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4, week 5, and 6, and 7 for the Tennessee Titans. I have a friend who's a Titans fan, a person I call friend. Don't know if he calls me his friend. But his whole concept, or I asked him what he thought about the Titans. He's a Titans fan, has been for a long time. He says that it's actually the coaching staff is so bad that you can't actually legitimately get a good assessment of whether or not Cam Ward is good. So only time will tell when that happens. To start off, the Tennessee Titans cut Tyler Lockett. He requested to be released so he can go join the Las Vegas Raiders, which, in case you didn't get the connection there, their head coach is Pete Carroll, the guy who had Tyler Lockett as a starting wide receiver for them. And Tyler Lockett, I think, is second string behind Jacoby Myers, who, with the addition of Tyler Lockett, may mean that Jacoby Myers is getting the trade that he wants. So we'll see as time goes on. As of right now, he's not been traded. So we'll see. Friday is a new day. Jonathan Taylor had this record that he was going for 3 consecutive games against the same opponent and getting 3 rushing touchdowns against that same opponent. No running back had ever done that. And he actually got 3 touchdowns in this game. Unfortunately, one of them was one of those pop passes, so the ball gets snapped in front of Daniel Jones. He has it, and he throws it forward, and he threw it forward 2 inches. Jonathan Taylor catches it, runs it in for a touchdown. Everybody's celebrating, and then they get reminded that a pop pass is a pop pass. So he got 2 rushing touchdowns and a passing touchdown. Fun for everyone, I'm sure. There's small technicalities because it is the exact same thing as a halfback dive, but it didn't work out that way. Don't feel too bad. He rushed for he had 2 rushing touchdowns, and off those 2 rushing touchdowns, because they handed the ball off to him a ton of times, but just off those 2 rushing touchdowns, he had 98 yards because one of them was an 80-yard rushing touchdown and pretty much opened up this game. And I think that tells you everything you need to know. I will say this could have been a heartbreaker game for the Tennessee Titans, because I'm pretty sure this is the game that broke them. They have been struggling, but the defense has always put up a fight. 38 points is very similar to what has happened to many other teams who have faced off against faced off against the Indianapolis Colts this season. So it doesn't make the Tennessee Titans any more of a victim than anybody else when they face off against the Colts. Anyway, Jonathan Taylor finishes with 153 total yards rushing and 3 touchdowns when it's all said and done. If you got Jonathan Taylor in fantasy, you're pretty much murdering everybody the second that his game starts. And it's quick and in a hurry, because he's getting most of their yardage, and they are not shying away from handing him the ball. It is week 8 of the NFL season, and Jonathan Taylor has 850 rushing yards this year. I will say that is important, because it means that he is within striking distance of a 1,000-yard season next week. If he has a game like he did this week versus the Tennessee Titans, he's had multiple 150-yard games, by the way. If he has another game like this, and there's no reason that he shouldn't, okay, I'll look. Colts schedule. Who are they playing next week? This coming week. They're playing the Steelers. So he's got like a legit chance of having like some real trouble, because the next couple of games are real tough for the Colts in general. Wow, man, I hate the way that, whatever. We'll talk about it later. Streamlabs tracks my keystrokes, which triggers stuff on screen even when I'm typing on another screen. The Colts play the Steelers, the Falcons, the Chiefs, and the Texans in the next 4 weeks. They play the Jaguars after that and the Seahawks. So literally they play 4 of the top 5 defenses in the NFL between the Chiefs, the Falcons, and the Texans and the Seahawks within their next 6 games. So JT's effervescent youth, it looks like he's untouchable. He's in the zone at all times when he has the ball in his hands. It may run out very quickly because of the quality of the defense he's facing off against, but 150 yards is very much feasible, and it would be crazy to be at the halfway point of the NFL season and have a 1,000-yard season already. That would be crazy. You know what would also be really crazy? it looks like he's more than close to being on track for a 2,000-yard season. Despite those next 6 games, I could totally see JT, Jonathan Taylor, getting 100 yards, 100-plus yards in each and every single one of those games with the way that the Colts are playing offense. He has 14 total touchdowns. He has 12 rushing touchdowns on the season. Like I said, he got 2 rushing touchdowns in this game and 1 passing one. So, I mean, it would take like an act of Congress, which, considering the shutdown, not possible, but it would take a miracle, if you will, for Jonathan Taylor not to finish with 20 touchdowns. And I mean, he's got to be in the lineup for like 25, right? I think it's got to be like 25. And if you tell me a 2,000-yard rusher with 20-plus touchdowns on the season is an MVP, that'd be kind of crazy. But we'll see, man. If it didn't happen, it should have happened last year. It should have happened the first time that Derrick Henry got 2,000 rushing yards. But to have the Colts be the reason that the Colts are so successful this year, it is because of Jonathan Taylor. If you don't have, obviously, like Daniel Jones taking a step forward and he works really well in Shane Steichen's offense, Shane Steichen's offense doesn't work without Jonathan Taylor. Anyway, like I said before, the Titans cut Tyler Lockett, and I'm sure he was super excited. He went from Nashville, Tennessee, which is a fun place to live, but he now lives in Las Vegas, Nevada, and plays for a coach that he actually likes. I don't know if he had anything against Brian Callahan or anything like that, but there's a reason he asked to be cut. And he took what I would perceive as a lateral move by going to the Raiders. But we'll see when it's all said and done. It's not like the Raiders now are about to get smacked around in the AFC West, but only time will tell. Especially considering like Pete Carroll, there's no telling like when Pete Carroll's going to be done coaching. There's no telling. This could be Tyler Lockett's final season for all we know, based off his age. But anyway, another Tennessee Titans great, Tyler Lockett, off into the night of the Vegas Strip. Anyway, moving on, last game in the snooze fest category. This one was pretty bad. If you didn't know, Bryce Young has like a high ankle sprain, and so he's out for this game. He's probably going to be out next week too. Which will make what happens next very interesting because news came out today. Andy Dalton broke his thumb again. If you remember, last year he broke his thumb, and it triggered Bryce Young coming back into the starting role and then playing really well the back half of the season. So, don't really know what the plan is. Didn't look into it because I was busy watching the actual games. Shout out to everybody who watched this game, by the way. It was a tough one from the start. The Bills' offensive line had a huge bounce-back game. You know, they got tore up versus the Atlanta Falcons on Monday Night Football, and they looked like they were the number 1 offensive line in the NFL in this game. They bodied up front. Tons of linebackers were picking turf out of their face mask the entirety of this game. They looked eerily similar to how the Bills dismantled the Jets earlier in this season. I think it was like week 2 or week 3 where a lot of people were like, oh man, Josh Allen had like a shitty game, when it was really they legitimately were undeterred by anything that the Jets were doing, and they just kind of cut through them like a hot knife through butter. You know what I mean? Slowly but surely, halftime of this game was 19-3. I think you're starting to catch my drift as to what was happening. With a touchdown from an insane A.J. Epinesa interception. He had like the defensive lineman's dream. They threw the ball up into the air. He caught it, and then when he caught it, Andy Dalton tried to run at him and tackle him. He juked him out. He literally just did like the one-step juke. Andy Dalton dove at his legs. He slid around him and he ran into the end zone, and that got them up to 12-3 as the score in this one. Most important factor in the first half of this game was James Cook, a guy that I feel like way too many people forget about. There was one thing that really irked me about the Bills when they played against the Atlanta Falcons. They abandoned the run, despite the fact that, you know, the point of football is to get the ball into your best players' hands, regardless of who you're going up against. If you give the ball to your best players, even if they're up against tough odds, it increases your chances of being able to win the game. And they chose not to do that versus the Falcons. That's probably why they lost that game. They got back to doing what they were supposed to do. He broke the record for the most rush yards in a first half since anybody 153 yards, by the way, in the first half of a fucking NFL football game. Crazy, right? The guy who held the record before, pretty familiar with the James. Dalvin Cook. James Cook's older brother. Crazy work, right? Crazy work. Mom's got to be proud. Mom and dad got to be pretty proud of that one. Shout out Josh Dubois for that one. He tweeted that out, and I thought that was insane. Shout out to both of the Cook brothers. Sad the way it ended up for Dalvin, but I'm sure he's real happy that his little brother's out there doing his thing too. He got vultured. James Cook got vultured by Josh for a touchdown, and eventually in this game, he surpasses Cam Newton twice. So he surpasses Cam Newton for total games with a rushing and a passing touchdown in a singular game. Then he also surpasses Cam Newton for total rushing touchdowns by a quarterback in NFL history, which I didn't even know Josh Allen was anywhere near close to that, but it kind of goes to show, one, how good Cam Newton was, but also, two, how bad the Panthers were when Cam Newton was on the team. But yeah, you would imagine that number would be a lot higher than 77, I think, especially knowing what we know about Cam's ability as a quarterback and his intelligence as a quarterback as well. And he gets most of the, like I said, he got the most games with a passing and rushing touchdown in NFL history as well. As you can tell, the Panthers had a tough time affecting the Bills' offense. They scored 30 points on them. I think they only punted twice or something like that. The run success was surprisingly easy, considering that the best part of the Panthers' defensive line is the interior part of it with Derek Brown. But what did happen was they were kind of single blocking Ashton Robinson, and it opened up one of the guards to be able to go directly towards a linebacker. Typically, what was happening was they'd run outside zone left, outside zone right, or they'd run inside zone. The guard on the front side of the run, so if the ball's going to the right-hand side, the right guard is the front side guard. They'd grab Ashton Robinson. They'd be able to block Ashton Robinson or whoever that D tackle was, because sometimes it was Derek Brown. They'd be able to block him with their center, which is like the ultimate sign of what the hell's going on. If you're a D lineman, you're getting blocked by the center in a solo block. They use the center to block one of the interior D tackles, and the front side guard was able to go and get the backside linebacker. So the linebacker that is in trail position behind the linebacker that's angling towards the running back, and then it would set up the cutback lane on them almost every single time, and that's how James Cook got so wide open. Plus, the wide receivers for the Bills were blocking like they hit the blocking sled every single day at practice. Like, legitimately, there's multiple clips of like Keon Coleman has his defensive back completely locked up and for like 10 yards down the field, and it set up James Cook for a bunch of massive runs. It was one really beautiful to watch. I'm sure somebody's gonna make some kind of sexy breakdown of it. If you know the Eagles this year, they've been doing slow motion Mondays or whatever, when they show crazy runs from Saquon Barkley in slow motion. Need the Bills to give me some slow motion runs of some of those instead of the brain rot. Actually, you know what? With the brain rot, if you guys don't follow the Bills on Instagram or TikTok, or so, I don't think they posted on Twitter. I don't ever see it get posted on Twitter. I see it get posted on Instagram and TikTok. But if you follow them on those two accounts, they post like brain rot videos where deep fried brain rot memes is what it's supposed to be called. Crazy, just off the wall type stuff to summarize how they won different games. Anyway, they do that. And they need to post some slow-mos of James Cook getting open versus the Panthers and cruising into the end zone. The Panthers defense didn't get any help from the offense. They turned the ball over twice in their own territory. Legit, they had one good drive the entirety of this game. Andy barely had any time to throw. He was under pressure for 44% of his pass attempts. It felt like it was 98% when I watched the game. The Panthers are not a playoff contender, but the most important thing with them is to see progress, man, to see them moving forward in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, having Andy Dalton out there because he's not a part of necessarily the future plans of the Panthers, right? Because Andy Dalton is the backup QB for a reason. They're not overly invested in a guy who, Andy had his time in the sun. He had his time in the spotlight. It is supposed to be Bryce Young's time, but we'll see as time goes on. This was a game that many would say was demoralizing, especially with the way that happened. The way it happened, like towards the end. James Cook finishes this game with a career high. Surprise, surprise. When you get 216 yards at your career high, 216 yards and 2 touchdowns, it should have been 3. He got vultured by Josh Allen. That's got to be tough. Don't forget, when it comes to the Panthers, progress is never linear. There's never just going to be, you just get better and better every single day. It's always, there's going to be ups and downs and all this kind of stuff like that. But as a whole, the team did not look great, mainly because of the pass protection, which is reminiscent of the shades of what it looked like last year. By the way, big bummer for the Bills. Ed Oliver looks like he's done for the season. He tore his biceps. Crazy. H-Town, hold it down. The Bills had that scene from The Lion King before this game happened. They had that scene where Simba's like sitting in the plains, like the dark plains of the African Serengeti, I guess it is what it's called. And Mufasa's ghost is up in the sky and he says, "Remember who you are." And then he fades off into the distance. And the Bills decided, you're right. We should be running way more outside zone and letting James Cook cook. And that's what happened. The Bills are a team that feels like they want Josh Allen to play like Patrick Mahomes all the time. And that's what aggravates me the most, because it's just like everybody wants everyone to be Patrick Mahomes. They want Dylan Raiola to be Patrick Mahomes. Dylan Raiola wants to be Patrick Mahomes. Everybody else wants to throw and pass the ball like Patrick Mahomes does. But Josh has his own way of doing things, and I think you got to embrace that. That's like, if there's ever going to be a style that you think can beat Patrick Mahomes, it's got to be it can't be a copycat. A copycat in and of itself is flawed because it is a copy. It's never the original. But yeah, hopefully the Bills remember that lesson, because they took a couple of L's remembering this lesson, trying to do new stuff. Maybe that's what they were going for, but for the most part, man, whatever they did the last couple of weeks, they need to throw that away. They got up to the point where they were the only undefeated team left in the NFL, and then they went on that skid versus two really good teams. But Jesus, man. But yeah, we'll see. After this game was over, Ashton Robinson went up, and I'm sure a bunch of people saw this if you didn't see anything from this game. Ashton Robinson went up to Dion Dawkins. I don't know why I said Daryl Dawkins. Dion Dawkins, who is the right tackle for the Buffalo Bills. They got into a bit of a scuffle, and then he was pulled away by Derek Brown. Ashton Robinson was like losing his fucking shit over something that happened, and Dawkins was just kind of like clowning him a little bit. Somebody posted that the comment made was Ashton went up to him and said something, and then the comment in response from Dawkins was "scoreboard." One of the greatest comebacks ever, but it does get whacker. Dion gets a little corny after this one. He goes on Deebo Samuel's podcast, which, by the way, didn't know Deebo had a podcast on with Bleacher Report. Okay. Don't know what Bleacher Report is paying all these NFL players to do podcasts during the season, but I have a strange feeling it is good enough for them to take all the heat when their teams are losing about them doing a podcast, because when you lose football games, you have to spend 24 hours every single second, every single day preparing for the next game. You can't be a person with a family that loves you and stuff like that, and you can't eat and you can't sleep. You can't even go to the bathroom. You got to be focused on playing football. You can't do other stuff, whatever. He goes on Deebo's podcast, and Dawkins starts saying that a bunch of these dudes in the league are corny. Everybody in this league, there's so many corny dudes in this league. He goes on to say Ashton Robinson said he was going to fight him after the game, and then when Ashton Robinson came up to fight him, he said he was whack for doing that. And then I looked at myself, and I looked at the screen while I was looking at myself, and I said, that's not how the game go. That's not how the game go. He told you he was going to fight you. He came up and he was ready to fight you. And then Dawkins, who apparently does like MMA and boxing in the offseason, congratulations. It's a good workout, especially for bigger dudes. It gets a lot of full body stuff going, and does a lot of full body engagement, which is important as well, and helps you work on your explosion. He talked about I box with Max Crosby, and we said we're going to set it up. If you want to fight, you come to the gym and spar, bro, and everything like that. I will say this. I think I'm with Ashton Robinson on this one, mainly because Dawkins is cool with Dana White. But other than that, I'm moving on with my life. That's what happened in that game, and I'm moving on to the heartbreaker category. Heartbreaker, I could do this without even looking at my fucking notes, thankfully, because some of these games, despite being less than memorable, they have been grilled into my brain. The last couple of weeks, Drake May has been throwing the football as if he is the guy, that guy, the big guy in New England, because he broke some record that was held by the big guy, by Tom Brady at one point during this game. So, not going to lie, the Browns looked like they had some juice to start off this game, but then it became very clear early on that the Patriots had a plan, and that plan was pretty fucking simple. But we'll talk about that later. They had an opening touchdown drive, and you know how much I love those. You know, they had an opening drive touchdown. Then, right after that, they got an INT from Carson Schwarzenegger, you know, the fan favorite rookie linebacker, fan favorite, you know what I mean. Feels like Myles Garrett should get half on the INT from Carson Schwarzenegger, but I'm sure they're not going to statistically ever do that. But basically, Myles was rushing so quickly towards Drake May that he brought his eyes down and then just chunked the ball into the open field, and it went right into Carson's hands. I feel like that's an assist. It has to be. I know he gets a pressure out of it, but a pressure's not as good as like getting an assist on an INT, whatever. After these two awesome things happened, pretty much everything else afterwards sucked ass except stuff that Myles Garrett did. Well, we'll talk about that. They started cascading downhill. They actually, after the interception, it would have given them a 10-3 lead versus the Patriots, except they missed the field goal. So instead, the Patriots got the ball back 8 yards further back than where they got the ball picked off from. So yeah, the interception happened. The Browns gained 8 yards, kicked a field goal, missed it, and the Patriots just got the ball 8 yards further back from where they originally touched the ball. The Patriots' plan was pretty clear. Their whole job was to fuck up Quinshon Judkins, and it worked. Their job was, hey man, stop Judkins. Also, at this point, it is a trend. You got to point it out. The Patriots have not allowed more than 50 yards from an individual running back all season. They have not allowed 100 yards rushing from an entire team all season as well. This one was no different, as you can imagine, because the Browns don't necessarily have the best offensive line in the NFL. So you can tell by how free Fannin, the rookie tight end, and Njoku were at a couple of points throughout this game that their whole goal was to fill the rush lanes. Their whole goal was to fill the rush lanes as much as and quickly as possible. Their D-line was bodying the Cleveland Browns up front. They were getting tons of penetration. As halftime drew closer, as halftime drew closer and closer, that penetration started to pick up a lot more, obviously because they were getting better and more accustomed to going up against these guys. And then on top of that, they were visibly stronger. The D-line for the Patriots were visibly stronger than the Cleveland Browns offensive line. There was a couple moments where they had some good pass protection, but you know, Dylan Gabriel's in a situation where they've taken away the run game. They're dropping back into deep coverage, and they have some good like man and zone coverage with Christian Gonzalez and Marcus Jones now emerging as two legitimately really good cornerbacks. I don't think they had Kyle Duggar in this game. By the way, he got traded away to the Steelers, which is crazy because Kyle Duggar was a guy who went to like Rensselaer University, and his whole thing was he had all these crazy physical freak dimensions. I think he's like 6'3", and he runs like a 4.3 or something like that, has a 42-inch vertical, but he went to like a D3 or a D2 school or something, and he was one of Bill Belichick's final draft picks as the head coach of the New England Patriots. So, yeah. Anyway, he did not play in this game, but Marcus Jones and Christian Gonzalez have been on fire since they paired up in this one. Marcus Jones has got like a tackle for loss in every game this season, which is crazy. But yeah, it was bad. It actually was so bad that it started to affect like the trick plays that the Browns were running. They ran a double pass. Nobody was open, and the wide receiver had to like run back towards the middle of the field away from the offensive line because the offensive line that moved over to help with the double pass actually got beat in the pass rush, and so he had to run up the middle of the field. He got hit by a Patriots linebacker after gaining 3 yards. So it was a lot of energy for 3 yards. They wanted a rookie QB to figure out how to beat a really good NFL defense with no run game. And as you can imagine, that did not happen. You got to give credit where credit is due. The Browns defense was on point. They didn't surrender a touchdown in the first half of this game, and they kept the score 9-7 off the Patriots' 3 field goals in the first half. So it was really good. Like I said before, if they had made that field goal on that possession off the interception, it would have been 10-7 more than likely. I'm sorry, 10-9 going into the half because of the effort of the defense. But it was not to be. A lot of that was due to another game where Myles Garrett was cooking like a chef, at Benihana for a baddie's birthday on Saturday. This game was insane. Honestly, they should just only show the ISO cam that is on Myles Garrett the entirety of this game. That should be posted on the internet for posterity. Myles Garrett has 5 sacks by the time this game is over with. He got 2 sacks in the first half, and that helped him pass up one of the greatest defensive linemen ever in total sacks in Reggie White. That is the level. That is where Myles Garrett is. More sacks than Reggie White. Obviously, Reggie White has some different circumstances in the sense that he didn't see as many pass plays in his day. But nonetheless, Myles Garrett is one of the greatest defensive ends ever. And he's going to spend most of his good years with the Browns in Cleveland. No diss to Cleveland, but you know what I mean. So I think the Patriots actually were trolling in the second half of this game. They ran a double pass on in the second, basically in the first drive of the second half, and they actually gained 11 yards off of it. So it was actually even more insulting. They gained 11 yards off of a catch from Mac Hollins. So that was pretty tough. They got a first down off of it. So yeah, like I said, the Patriots basically locked up the second half of this game, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my personal favorite part of this entire game, and it was so worth watching all the terrible Browns football plays leading up to this. Stephon Diggs scores his first touchdown as a New England Patriot, and he gets the whole team to come into the end zone, and they do the 3-pump dance on the Key and Peele skit. I loved it, man. And they actually got away with all 3 pumps, and they did not throw the flag, which is kind of antithetical to what the 3-pump rule is, and that's kind of fucked up. But nonetheless, they got away with it. They got away with the 3 pumps. This is a new era of football, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys don't know, Jordan Peele, Keegan-Michael Key used to have a show on Comedy Central that kind of filled the void in our hearts of the Chappelle Show. They were a really, they're probably the second best skit show in the history of Comedy Central behind the Chappelle Show. And that's saying a lot. But they had a moment where they had a fake football player. I think it was Hingle McCringleberry, and he was like a recurring character. And they talked about his first skit with Hingle McCringleberry, which is just Keegan-Michael Key dressed up like a football player in the NFL, in the fake NFL. And their whole limitation was, you got to know the 3-pump rule. The 3-pump rule is, in the NFL, if you do 3 pumps, it is sexual. And it is a penalty because of a personal foul for indecent behavior or whatever. And the response, the crowd's laughing. They're like, no, you got to see it. And the whole skit is, there's a wide receiver who keeps doing the same celebration in the end zone. He keeps pumping twice, which is fine, and then he does a 3rd pump when the referee's looking at him and throws a flag. This evolved. It has a multi era of the NFL timeline, because a wide receiver for, I want to say it was Kenny Stills, a wide receiver for the Saints actually did the 3-pump celebration in the end zone for the Saints after scoring a touchdown. And on the 3rd pump, he had his teammate pretend to throw a flag. And then the actual referee in the game threw a flag because it was excessive celebration because it involved props and stuff like that. Which is really funny because it wasn't about the 3 pumps. But it did make it look like the 3 pumps was the skit. This is the next level of it. They had an entire NFL offense do the 3 pumps, and it turned into no penalty whatsoever. Maybe we as a society have moved forward. Or maybe we've moved back. Who knows? That was my favorite part of this entire game. That's pretty much it. So, anyway, back to the ass whooping. Gabriel throws 2 interceptions in the second half of this game. Did I mention the Patriots said fuck the run game in this one? Quinshon Judkins had 19 carries. He got 9 yards. The Patriots like I said, they haven't surrendered even 50 yards to a single rusher this entire season. It just wouldn't be the Patriots game without one of their running backs fumbling. Travion Henderson fumbled on the 1-yard line and was recovered by the Browns, which actually kind of fucked the Browns because they actually got a safety off of an intentional grounding play 2 plays later. So it actually ended up with points anyway for the Patriots. So, by the way, the Browns may have figured out how to do onside kicks. They recovered 2 They've recovered 2 so far this season, and they use the typical little end over end pop up method where the ball, like you chop shot the ball and it flips end over end, and when it hits the ground, it pops up like 10 yards in the air. They had a wide receiver. I'm sorry, it was Felipe Franks who actually got called for. Was it Felipe Franks? Am I tripping? Anyway, no, that's later on. Andre Smith's somehow he hit him with the end over end chopper, and the Browns recovered it. So yeah, I guess they figured out how to do onside kicks in an era where you have to tell the opponent that you're doing an onside kick. I don't know. I'm sure every special teams coordinator in the NFL is studying it. I will not be. I just want to see more onside kicks recovered, because that being removed from the game is kind of tough for everybody, I think. Miami Dolphins, Atlanta Falcons. You know what time it is. 34-10. If you guys didn't know, Michael Penix did not play in this game. He's supposedly coming back this upcoming Sunday. We'll see what happens. They had Kirk Cousins in the driver's seat. And if there was ever a time for Kirk Cousins to go out there and ball out of fucking control, it is this game. It is against a team that is terrible at defending the run. It is against a team that is really bad. Well, they're below average in playing defense in the NFL overall. This is against a team that has an offense that has turned the ball over 6 times in the last 2 games that they have played. That is probably why they lost 34-10, and Kirk Cousins looked terrible. So, and that's why he's going to be trapped in Atlanta until his career's over. Trapped in Atlanta, getting paid, forced to take that $40 million. Anyway, Tua got added to the injury report the morning of this game, and nobody's confirmed it yet, but everybody's speculating, and I think we all kind of pseudo-confirmed it. He had pink eye. Don't know where. I mean, he's got a kid, right? So, like, that happens to, like, parents all the time, right? Like, you're, like, wiping your kid's ass, and somehow poop gets in your eye. He got pink eye, and it helped, apparently. I don't know why or how, anything like that, but yeah, shades on inside the arena. If you guys don't know, Mercedes-Benz Dome. I'm sure if you're watching this podcast and you watch like college football, you know Mercedes-Benz has God's butthole, but also it's closed all the time. So if you don't know why it's called God's butthole, don't worry about it. It's because of the way the dome closes at the arena. Go look it up. Anyway, he gets added to the injury report. He comes out and he's like warming up with sunglasses on. And the reporters are like, what's going on here? Is this like a normal thing? And he just didn't want to show people his eye, because I'm assuming his eye looked like he had pink eye. And they didn't want to put on the report that their quarterback got pink eye last night or like the day before. And it was full blown at the game. Because then people will be asking, there's only one way to get pink eye. And, you know, he's got a kid. I think Tua has a kid. Anyway, definitely a great time to blame your kid for getting poop in your eye instead of the other thing. Because then I think a lot of people would know a lot more about Tua than they actually wanted to. Because most people don't want to know anything about Tua. They want Tua to go away. Anyway, that being said, Michael Penix and Drake London are out of this game, so you should expect it to look bad offensively to a certain degree, except they have the best running back in the NFL. The first drive of this game ends with Caden Ellis sack, and you definitely feel like you're going to get another Dolphins shit sandwich after that play. Because it feels like the Falcons are going to come out here and do their whole thing where they're like one of the best defenses in the NFL. They drop back into coverage while their actually good defensive line goes out there and generates pressure. Their linebackers are all over the place. They have Caden Ellis, who's like one of the best blitzing linebackers in the NFL as a whole. We saw glimpses of the Dolphins defense improving last week when they faced off against the Browns with Quinshon Judkins. Remember, he had like 2 rushes that accounted for like 98% of his yards, and then the rest of the game he basically couldn't do anything. This game is a continuation, it seemed like. They in particular, Jordan Brooks smokes Bijan Robinson pretty much every time he touches the ball in this game, which is cool because Jordan Brooks was not only a draft pick by the Seattle Seahawks, but he was also cut halfway through last season after being he was a starting middle linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks, and he got cut halfway through, and he ended up with the Dolphins. And this is like kind of like his breakout return game or whatever. But he's been on the team since like week 9 of last season. But he got 10 tackles, a sack, and 3 tackles for loss throughout the course of this game. So he had a great day. He had a fantastic day. Shout out to Jordan Brooks, man. Especially considering, the Seahawks defense has obviously gone on to become like one of the best in the league, but Jordan Brooks is a good linebacker. He just wasn't fit. He just didn't fit for Mike McDonald's defense. And you can see why. He was kept clean by the Dolphins' defensive line up front, too, which is an important part of being a good linebacker. This is amazing considering, like I said a year ago, dude was getting cut. Now he's balling. The Dolphins' offense also combined for an effective offense. They made a very specific effort to make moves on short yardage plays. That was the big counterpoint here. And also, they pieced together that they should be running the ball more. Who would have thought? Who would have thought your quarterback has been struggling all season? You're down your number 1 wide receiver already in Tyreek Hill. You have Jalen Waddle, and everybody knows that you want to get the ball to Jalen Waddle. You don't have a very distinctive tight end in terms of like getting open because you traded him away. And you're trying to figure out how to get the ball to Malik Washington and Westbrook Aquino, right? And a couple of other rookie wide receivers and stuff like that. Maybe, just maybe, we rotate through all the running backs instead of just trying to run Devon Achane into the ground, which they did. They rotate. They had Ollie Gordon out there who was looking. This was the most action Ollie's gotten the entire season, and he looked good getting that many touches, which I think is going to inspire Mike McDaniels, if he's still the coach, in a couple of hours of the Miami Dolphins to continue to give him the ball because he is a rookie running back. And Devon Achane, every time he touched the field, was completely fresh, while the defense had just finished chasing Ollie Gordon and a couple of other running backs as well. And now they bring in their number 1 running back on like third down and other downs and situations like that. And he's able to go out there and rip them a new one, which is pretty much how they won this game. They used six offensive linemen throughout the course of this game as well, which helped with the blocking lanes and stuff like that. So taking already good running backs and giving them more good blocking against the defense that has a nasty tendency of dropping a ton of players. They play so much zone coverage that everybody naturally takes a step back, and it puts the linebackers in a situation where in run coverage they have to be damn near perfect, which Caden Ellis is really good, but to ask him to be perfect every single play is unreasonable. They used to have the landman, which, he plays for the Rams now. He won Defensive Player of the Week like 4 weeks ago or whatever. He's really good. They used to have him and Caden Ellis. Now they got a rookie out there, and they took advantage of that rookie versus Devon Achane. But yeah, they created their own advantage in this game by wearing down the defense of the Atlanta Falcons. And that was the first time you could see a discernible game plan from the Dolphins executed to a T. They established the run all game. What a concept. The Dolphins held the Falcons to 10 yards in the first half of this game. It took a while, but the Dolphins' game plan worked, and the run defense drew the linebackers down, and it created space over the top, or created space in the gap between the linebackers and the secondary for some big passes down the sideline. They had Jalen Waddle. He got a 43-yard touchdown. He had catches for 22 yards and 18 yards throughout the course of this game. The Falcons tried to run their offense passing-wise through Kyle Pitts. That did not work. And we saw that fail multiple times. They tried to get the ball to Bijan Robinson, and like I said, Jordan Brooks was on his ass like white on rice this entire game. Kirk struggled to connect with a lot of the wide receivers, in particular in the option routes. They were having a tough time. Look, man, I'm going to be honest. I know Kirk is smart. A lot of those wide receivers he was throwing to are younger guys, so the chances that they misread the zone defense that they were going up against is a lot higher than Kirk not knowing what the fuck is going on. So that happened. That turned him into like a check down addict vast majority of this game, especially on third down. They didn't convert a third down into the fourth quarter of this game, and I think that tells you everything you need to know about how this got to 34-10. It is a miracle that they scored 10 points. I'm not gonna lie. This let the Dolphins' defensive line cook. And obviously Kirk Cousins is nowhere near as mobile as young Michael Penix. The only blemish of this game was the Dolphins losing their number 1 cornerback, Storm Duck, for the rest of the season. He missed like the first 6 weeks of the season when they played he played in the Colts game, hurt his ankle, came back for this game, and now he's out for the season. Tough. The biggest play for the Falcons might have been Felipe Franks, who got called for 2 penalties during punts he nearly pulled off a flawless, and I say this in the sense of this is an onside kick. It was a high arcing onside kick, so they want the ball to be in the air when it they want the ball to be out of reach of the hands team when it crosses the 10-yard marker, right? Felipe Franks, who's a former college quarterback, he played for like the Gators, right? Now he's a tight end in the NFL. He times up the jump perfectly. He has the ball in his hands as he's going down to the ground. He hits the ground and he fumbles the ball away. So the ball ends up not in his hands with the Dolphins, and they win the game. Well, they were going to win the game regardless, but they almost pulled off a pretty cool onside kick. Moving on, the Jets played the Bengals. This game was fucking insane. Off the top of this one, Nick Mangold, who I think if you've watched football for a long time, you know who Nick Mangold was. He was a pretty prominent offensive lineman. He passed away sadly because he's had like a kidney disease for quite some time, and I think he's been on dialysis for years at this point, and eventually, dialysis stops being effective in terms of like helping your kidney function and stuff like that, and you have to get kidneys replaced. He tried to find a donor, and unfortunately, he was not able to find a donor in enough time, and he passed away, which is terrible. It seems like, for as many advancements that we make in society, we still have deaths that seem like they're kind of avoidable, but I wouldn't know how to do that. I'm just a dude that talks on the internet, but it is sad. He has a bunch of kids, a wife. I follow his sister, Holly Mangold, on the internet, on Instagram and stuff like that. She's a power lifter, and she's been really sad that her big brother's gone. But yeah, man, it was terrible because I listened to a podcast called Pardon My Take. It's a Barstool podcast. It's the only one I listen to. I promise. I strongly dislike Dave Portnoy as a human being, and I like Pardon My Take. It's goofy and stuff like that. They talk about sports in a unique way, but they actually know Nick Mangold. They actually had him on one of their other Barstool shows, and they had him kind of give his pitch to try and find somebody out there that could be a donor for him in terms of a kidney and get people getting tested and all this kind of stuff, and they couldn't find anybody in enough time, which is always a bummer. But yeah, RIP Nick Mangold. That is how that actually happened the morning of the game. So that is obviously none of the guys on the Jets played with Nick Mangold. He's been retired for like 6 or 7 years or something like that. But none of the guys on the Jets have played with Nick Mangold, but he was a big part of the organization. He's in the Ring of Honor, so his name is in the stadium forever. The scoring pace of this game was pretty insane. Now, at this point during the season, you expect the Bengals to be able to put up 40 points in the right situation because they have added Joe Flacco, who knows how to sling that thing and get the ball down the field. So far this season, Joe Flacco has answered the question, can he get rid of the ball faster than the offensive line for the Bengals can fail? And the Bengals have done better at pass blocking, I'll say that much. The Bengals get out to a pretty big lead in this one. They get out to a lead of 17-3, and they keep it 98% of the game. Most of this game feels like it looks. Like the Bengals are running away with it, and it was so out of control. Not out of control. It was so wild at one point. Chris Brown was actually having a great day running the ball. And if you know anything about what Chris Brown's been up to the last year and a half as a starting running back, for the Bengals, he has been struggling, is the nice way to say it. It'd be cool if they added another layer to their offense, but I asked it like 4 weeks ago, and I was just like, dude, I don't understand why Chris Brown is a starter. Samaje Perine been getting some more carries, and I'm sure that helps Chris Brown be fresher when he goes out there. Also, Samaje is a really good blocker. He's a veteran running back in the NFL, but Chris Brown has like his first really good day, first really good game of the season in this one, and he does a crazy slide cancel on a flea flicker. So he's got the ball in his hand, he turns around, and he sees a D lineman about to sack Joe Flacco if he throws the ball back for a flea flicker. He keeps the ball, runs up the field for like 13 yards. That's how in the zone Chris Brown was today. He saw, it was just it was wild. The Bengals had multiple drives where it didn't even look like the Jets defense was there, which is really wild because of how well the Jets defense has played the last 3 weeks. The defense, on the other hand, essentially broke down the second that Trey Hendrickson was out for the Bengals. He had a hip injury coming in, and then one of these plays, I wouldn't call it dirty, it was super sus. He's getting pass blocked, he's running the loop, he gets turned around because he's trying to pull off a spin move, but he can't get his head all the way back around to be facing the quarterback. And then the guard for the Jets comes in and hits him from behind, and it messes up his hip that he's already hurt, right? It messes up his hip that is already hurt. Kind of crazy, but kind of crazy series of circumstances, but it does work that way. He does not come back in this game. He was rushing Fields pretty much the first 2 quarters of this game, and then after he's gone, there's just no pass rush whatsoever. The Jets used their big brains today, and they stuck to the plan, and they ran the fucking ball. There were 32 rush attempts to 32 pass attempts in this game. 40% of their runs in this game were over 5 yards. They had 11 carries from Justin Fields, 18 carries from Breece Hall, 7 carries from Isaiah Davis, a guy that you never even heard of, right? 15 rushes were over 5 yards in this game, like I said before. They had a 50-yard rush, and they had 3 for over 20 in the course of this one, including a 35-yard rush. So there's a bunch of rushes, a bunch of run plays that were over 20 yards throughout the course of this game versus the Bengals defense. Running this well created a ton of time for the few amount of passes that they needed from Justin Fields to be successful. The Jets factually are a running team. When they run the ball, they win. That's just facts. That when they run the ball, that they win. And they have been a team that has refused to run the ball a bunch this season, especially with the great variety that they ran it with, which is wild because, they had Bo Allen earlier in the season, and before he got hurt, I'm sure they would have loved to see some better run distribution between all 3 of them. But some tactical masterminds remembered they have a good running back. Breece Hall finally had a really good game. Their defense may have been terrible Sunday, but the offense slowly walked down the Bengals as this whole game was going on. The Jets have their worst offensive performance of the entire season, and it doesn't matter. They still win the game, which is crazy. Will McDonald had a 3rd down sack to force a punt with 7 minutes in the 4th quarter. It was 32-38. Crazy because at one point I think the biggest gap was like 24-17. They basically had like a floating 14-12 point lead throughout the course of this game, and then they finally closed it out. The Jets score after that sack. They take the lead 39-38. Joe Flacco goes up the tunnel right before they go back out on offense, and then he's back in time for them to step out onto the field and be able to go out there and play offense. Jake Browning was warming up, and I think every Bengals fan that was in the arena or in the stadium was about to shit themselves, just like Joe Flacco probably did when he went inside the tunnel. The Bengals only had 4 drives where they didn't score in this game, and they still lost, which is brutal. Like, you did almost everything right, and it still wasn't enough. You just needed a couple more stops on defense. The Jets scored on 100% of their drives in the second half of this game. An absolutely brutal day coming out just because the Jets were winless coming into this one, and the Bengals continue to be a team that is teetering on the verge of being a real playoff contender. And beating the Jets would have gone a long, long way into helping that. But it did not happen, and it was probably the most entertaining game of the entire weekend, but it is in the heartbreaker category because this feels like it is a game that is going to set back the Bengals in terms of competing for the AFC North title, because now Lamar Jackson is back, and they still got to play them one more time. Or they had to play them twice, I think. And obviously, you can sit here and talk about Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers all you want. They struggled to really kind of separate themselves versus the Steelers. Moving on to the oh my category. Oh my in this one, I'm just going to go through a bunch of these and see what, no, I'm going to do it the right way in this one. Some of these games have interesting results that are vastly important. I just want to start off, since we're talking about the Broncos, Cowboys, 44-24. Congratulations to the Denver Broncos, you finally played 4 quarters of complete NFL football for the first time this entire season. The first half of this game, the first drive of this game, starts with Bo Nix on the third play throwing the worst pass he has thrown in the NFL since he got here, which was last year. So he's got some room to work with, right? He throws a ball 5 yards behind a wide open Troy Franklin, and it goes right into the hands of a defensive back who was very clearly beat in man coverage, and it turns into an interception. Crazy work. The Cowboys get some kind of semblance of offense out of this one, while most of their first half was defined by the Broncos defensive line getting after Dak Prescott, and the numbers bear themselves out. If there is a quarterback that there's a day and night difference when they are under pressure and when they are not under pressure, it is Dakota Rain Prescott. When he is not pressured throughout the course of a game, he is the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL. When he is the worst quarterback that is playing on Sunday. And this game, you can tell by the 10 points who showed up to play. I'm sorry, by the 24 points who showed up to play. But yeah, Nick Bonito and the boys were getting busy. To their credit, they slowed it by refusing to give up on establishing the run. Javonte Williams got a bunch of carries in this one. I respected it. Blue, I forget his first name, but Blue, number 23 for the Dallas Cowboys, got a bunch of carries as well. The Broncos offense establishes the run early as the Cowboys try to keep establishing the run and in an attempt to play for more separation or more hesitation from the defense in the second half. But the Broncos, they came out there. Their plan was to run the ball over the Cowboys because, the Cowboys, anyway, we'll talk about that later. R.J. Harvey and J.K. Dobbins have eerily similar running styles where they take contact pretty well and then they have really good explosion once they get out in the open space. R.J. Harvey in this game had 3 touchdowns. 2 were rushing, 1 was a receiving one, where he was wide open. He had like a flat route out of the back of the end zone, and nobody covered him because they chose to slide the protection to the right, and it left, I can't remember who it was. It left the defensive end like wide open and rushed straight at the quarterback, and it just didn't work. R.J. Harvey, like I said, 3 touchdowns, and J.K. Dobbins hit him up for 111 yards rushing. I will say this, J.K. Dobbins' yardage was a lot more valuable in terms of keeping the multiple drives alive that led to the 44 points than R.J. Harvey's touchdown. Like, R.J. Harvey had 2 big touchdown runs. I'm not going to take that away from him. But J.K. Dobbins felt like his yardage, the 111 yards, were a huge part of how the Broncos scored their passing touchdowns as well. Did you guys know the Cowboys really can't play defense? Outside of their rookie defensive back who we talked about, like the third play of this game, Triquez Bridges, who, by the way, the reason Bo Nix was throwing in that direction towards Troy Franklin is because they identified Bridges as the mark. Because after that interception, pretty much everything, every time they threw in his general direction, the wide receiver caught the ball with Bridges 5 yards behind him and them running up the field. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. They targeted him the entirety of the game, and it was tough. It was brutal for a rookie for sure. The Cowboys are tied for second in the division, while also being 3 games behind the Eagles, who are in first. So it could have been worse. You get smoked by 3 possessions, and somehow you're still in second place in your division. So, they do have another matchup with the Eagles coming up relatively soon. We've always thought it would be insane to expect a Colts level of offensive production from the Cowboys throughout the course of a game to compensate for the lack of defense that is being played. We've always thought that was insane throughout the course of the season. I've been saying it. You've been saying it. And this is an example of it. Why? This is an example why the Denver Broncos are a really balanced team that has a young quarterback, but they have all the support staff around that quarterback to be able to make him successful when it's all said and done. Their next 6 games, the Cowboys' next 6 games, are versus the Cardinals, the Raiders, the Eagles, Chiefs, the Lions, and the Vikings. And I don't know if you heard what I just heard there. I heard 1 bad defense and 4 top 10 defenses in the NFL. So expect to see some more action like we're seeing here. Obviously, that Vikings game is going to be interesting. The Cardinals game is always going to be interesting, but the Cardinals play really good defense. The Raiders game is probably the only like certified in your brain win that you can see from the Cowboys for the next 6 weeks. They're playing the Eagles and they're playing the Chiefs, and you know what time it is. The Eagles know they can't pull punches versus the Cowboys, because if they give them a chance to get into the game, they will take it and they will win the game. The Chiefs know that they can't pull punches versus the Cowboys because they've seen how much they've done on offense. Also, once again, the Chiefs have a top 5 defense in the NFL. They are in theory, not even in theory, they are better than the Broncos defensively. And the Broncos are one of the best teams in the NFL defensively. By the way, Broncos still on pace for the most sacks all time in a singular season by a team. Still in the running for that. Crazy to think that could be possible, but it is. But yeah, that's it. I don't know what the Broncos proved by beating the Cowboys. I guess they proved that they're like a really balanced team because they went up against, I don't know. They went up against a team that has a immensely powerful offense, and they held them to 24 points, which is impressive. That's really good. And then they put up 44 points, which I think is a season high in points scored. It is for the Broncos overall, which is great because at some point you got to be able to go out there and prove that Bo Nix can go out there and score points. They had a couple of big rushing touchdowns, but a lot of dimes thrown by Bo Nix. A lot of dimes in this game thrown by young Bo. So I don't really know what you take from this other than the assumption was the Broncos were going to win this game, and then they won it handily, which is usually a sign of a good team. So, yeah. Once again, the Broncos, good at football. We knew that already, but good at football. Every win does matter, though. Don't forget that. Other stuff, the Bears played against the Ravens. I'll save you. This is this score. It looks normal to you. It's important to me. It's important to me personally. The Ravens did something that I've been waiting to see this entire time while Lamar's been out. I thought when I heard that Lamar was going to go down, he's going to rest up. And the first thing that popped in my head was this is a good opportunity for the offense to figure out how to operate without Lamar Jackson. Can they be successful? Can they figure out a way to get up and down the field without having an MVP as their QB? And when they had Snoop Huntley in this game, because he was the starting quarterback for this game, they figured out how to score 30 points because, one, Derrick Henry's back from the dead. Derrick Henry has been revitalized. He has been given mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and he is back. The king is back from the dead. And the 30 points on the board was a lot due to his ability to run the ball throughout the course of this game. That was really important. The other part was the defense. The defense. We've been waiting for some semblance of the Ravens defense that we think on paper was supposed to be really good. Obviously, the biggest issue is that they don't get a ton of pressure. Michael Green got his first sack as a NFL linebacker in this one. There was some pressure on Caleb Williams throughout the course of this game, which is a great sign because the Bears have been good up until this point. Now, you can talk about their opponents and the quality of opponents. Yeah, sure, till you're blue in the face. They did beat the Commanders when they had Jaden Daniels. I will say that. But they have been good. There's no way to weasel around it or anything like that. So it's important that it means something to me in particular. The Ravens came out here and they held the Chicago Bears offense that is shown that has been slowly mimicking and getting closer to looking like the Detroit Lions offense, and they were able to go out there and stop them. They knew they had to stop Monunga. They knew they had to stop Swift. They went out there and they did it. They forced Caleb Williams to go out there and beat him, have him beat them with his arm, right? And I actually went back and I looked at the numbers. I think I wrote it down here. They had 48 plays in total, 48 pass plays in total. They had 9 pass plays out of the 48 that were completed for over 10 yards. And they had 4 that were over 20. So in total, they had 13 pass plays out of the 48 that were what we would consider explosive. They had multiple no gains. So I think they had like 5 no gains. They had 6 tackles for loss that were got against them in the course of this game as well. So just as many of the explosive, really, you only qualify things over 20 yards as explosive. So they only had like 4 explosive plays throughout the course of this game. But the important part was, they limited Caleb Williams' options, and he has some good wide receivers. They had a crazy one-handed catch by DJ Moore, who, by the way, you want to talk about somebody who probably secretly has to get traded. DJ Moore is one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. He's just not being utilized in this offense, but we'll see as time goes on. But the Ravens had a pretty simple plan. They took away the run, and they put pressure on their secondary to defend, and they did it. That's how they won this game. The Ravens looked like they scored 30 points without Lamar Jackson against the Chicago Bears, a team that has looked, at this point, I would dare say they're slightly below average, maybe even average on a good day. And that's a good start, especially considering how the early half of this season has gone for the Ravens. They need some kind of semblance of a win in the course of this game. Or in the course of this part of the season, especially this part without Lamar Jackson. They finally got it. I think that's all I got for this one. Yeah, they got beaten the most predictable way. Most teams are going to be trying to execute this type of game plan. It just felt like the Ravens had the type of personnel to be able to pull it off. Stop the run, force the pass. Moving on, New York Giants lose 38-20 to the Philadelphia Eagles, the Eagles. The second play of this game scares anyone who watches the NFL on a regular basis that isn't an Eagles fan. They handed the ball off to Saquon Barkley, and then he ran untouched for 65 yards for a touchdown. I'm afraid, my boys and gals and theys, he's back. Well, he's not actually back. I think he's going to miss this upcoming week. He got hurt in the back half of this game, but it was after he ran for almost 200 yards. Whatever. Saquon Barkley's back, everybody. Isn't that fun? It was cool. He took like a 6-week vacation. Anyway, the Eagles are back, and the Giants flat out couldn't get Jalen Hurts down, so he had a ton of time in the pocket to go out there and find opportunities to get the ball to people. For some reason, when he scrambles, his go-to guy is Devontae Smith. A.J. Brown didn't play in this game, by the way. Don't worry. He didn't have to slap. He didn't have to his passive-aggressive actions on the sidelines today. But nonetheless, Devontae Smith did his thing. Jahan Dotson got a crazy catch in the end zone. From a dime that Jalen Hurts threw to him and everything like that. The rush offense allowed for the passing to be able to go out there and flourish, which is really important. So yeah, that was pretty cool. The overall thing that you take away from this, and I know a lot of you guys are really obsessed with Cam Skattebo. I find it weird because it's the thing. You love Cam Skattebo because of the thing, not because of him being a doofus or his personality or anything like that. You love him because of the thing, and I'm not going to say it. I do feel bad for him, though. The dude does play really cool. The dude does play the kind of football that older football fans are real big fans of. So, disappointing because I know that type of injury can really hamper elite-level athletes like Cam Skattebo because he's dude can move. Dude's got wiggle. Dude's got power, but dislocated ankle and a broken leg is a tough way to go, especially for the rookie season, man. So hopefully he bounces back. If there's ever going to be somebody who breaks the trend of how this injury affects a player, it is going to be a young Cam Skattebo, a man who probably barely has a belief in physics itself, which probably explains a lot of the reason the way that he runs the way that he does. The Giants offense did look good, even though they didn't necessarily have a run game for a vast majority of this one. They had a lot of Jackson Dart every week looks like he is getting better, which obviously you didn't see that from Russell Wilson because Russell Wilson's been playing football for a long time, and at a certain point you reach your cap. Anyway, Jackson Dart has been improving. He didn't have to depend on Rondale Robinson to go out here and carry the squad like he does every single week. He went out here, and I felt like he did a great job overall, especially considering the situation. The Eagles have one of the better defenses in the NFL. A lot of that is because of their pass rush, and a good chunk of that is also because of their the way that their secondary works out as well. So, no Cam Skattebo, and they still were able to go out there and put up 20 points. That's a good sign for a team that, if things go a little haywire, they could end up in the playoffs. If not, they're going to end this season. Brian Daboll's probably not going to get fired because they're bringing all the good feelings are emitted from the Giants. He's going to get another year to go out here and pull this one off, and maybe if they get lucky enough, they will be able to pull that off and still be in good position to draft players, still be in good position for draft picks and everything. The Eagles' offensive pace was insane. Dallas Goedert had 2 touchdowns again this season. A lot of that is due to the fact that when they run rollouts, they have Dallas Goedert roll out to the same side and direction as Jalen Hurts. And so he'll actually start off blocking, release, run an out route, and be open for a lot of the catches because typically when defensive players see Jalen Hurts coming, they're like, gotta hit him, especially because they know the D-line is typically like 10, 15 yards away. They run at him and drop down and try and hit him because they don't see Dallas Goedert release into his route, and this has worked like 15 times this season. Anyway, he does it again, gets another touchdown out of it. Jahan Dotson mossed one of the New York Giants defensive backs, and I'm sure they will be clowning that dude in film. They've already clowned that dude in film on Monday, I promise you. They get out to a lead. It's like 38 to 30. They get out to a lead. It's 38 to 13 at one point during this game, and they score the 38 points off the crazy Jahan Dotson touchdown. And you got to be feeling yourself. Jahan Dotson, I think he's got like 4 touchdowns this season or something like that. He's having a really good year. What else was I gonna say about this game? Oh, the Giants had their secondary mostly hurt in this one as well, and you could tell. The D-line was doing a good job of getting pressure. I'd also like to say the secondary clearly was covering well because there was a bunch of these times where Jalen Hurts couldn't find somebody to get open, but it was also at the same time where the D-line was getting locked up by the Eagles' O-line. So, it was tough. It was a tough combination of things, but overall, the Eagles were the more complete team that played in this game, and it feels like just yesterday the Giants were beating the Eagles' ass on Thursday Night Football, and their whole season was over. Everything is collapsing. They're never going to be good again. Nick Sirianni needs to be fired, and now they go out there and they beat the Giants 38-20. But yeah, that's it. The NFC East remains firmly in the hand of the Eagles, in the talon of the Eagles, and the Giants go home sad. They lose Cam Scatterboo, and they lose the game. Speaking of losing and going home sad, the New Orleans Saints, I put this in the oh my category because if you haven't heard or you have heard, I'll give it to you right now. The Saints end up changing quarterbacks in this game, and as far as we know, Tyler Shluh is going to be the guy who's starting this upcoming Sunday. Don't know if that's a good or a bad thing considering the current state of the Saints. So we will explain why. Spencer Rattler has turned the ball over a combined, 7 times because one of the turnovers was on Tyler Shluh. I would also like to point out in this game, 2 of the turnovers are fumbles by receivers. They're fumbles by receivers. So I don't know how that's Spencer's fault, but whatever. The 4th play of this game, Spencer Rattler does fumble. He fumbles, rushing up the field to try and scramble and get a first down. He gets hit from behind by 2 Buccaneers players. Luckily, we've seen all season that the Saints defense is good, and I think that's going to be the one positive you can take out of this one. The Saints defense still playing really good defense. Other than that, you see the score. The Saints continue to struggle on offense, but their defense is like that. The Bucs get in the Saints' red zone. At one point, they run the ball 6 times. So they're at the 16-yard line at one point off of a Sean Tucker run from the Buccaneers. They hand the ball off to Sean Tucker again. He runs for 15 yards. So the Buccaneers end up on the 1-yard line, and they run it 5 times in a row, and they get rejected 5 times in a row. So you know the Caesar Dome is turned the fuck up because the defense is going crazy on them. Defense is going crazy. The crowd's all into it. I'm into it while I'm watching the replay. Don't worry, 2 plays later, Spencer Rattler goes to throw a ball to a swing route to a flat route to Foster Monroe, and it gets tipped up in the air by Anthony Nelson, who, if you're not familiar, is a defensive lineman for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He catches it and runs that bitch in for a 3-yard touchdown. So all the energy from getting the crazy defensive stop is negated 2 plays later. That's tough. Untouched, by the way. Obviously untouched. He was like in the open flat. He timed up Spencer Rattler's throw. He threw it too low for Anthony Nelson, who's a really tall, like agile, long person who jumped up in the air. So it's not like he just threw it at his arm level and Anthony Nelson didn't do anything. Anyway, life comes at you fast, man. Don't worry, it gets worse. Chase Young recovers a fumble at one point during this game, and the Saints defense once again doing their job. Saints defense always doing their job. Antoine Winfield gets a crazy scoop and score at one point during this game. He picks up a fumble that was forced by Jamel Dean, and they say that he was touched down, like he was down by contact, so the touchdown doesn't count. There are 4 turnovers in this game at halftime, and 3 of them are by the Saints. So that kind of tells you pretty much all you need to know about this game. The my part was the pulling of Spencer Rattler, because I didn't know that the Saints weren't that invested in Spencer. I didn't know that the whole plan was for Tyler Shaw to be the guy. I know he's a rookie quarterback and all that kind of stuff like that, but I don't know. There's a couple of moments in this game. You can go back and watch it. Like, there's been a lot of moments this season where Spencer's been able to look pretty good. And now they're just going back to square zero by pulling Spencer and putting in this guy, Tyler, who was in college for 7 years. So that's like his whole thing. He had like a bunch of injuries plus the COVID year. And he was in college for 7 seasons. So, yeah. He's now a starting quarterback for an NFL team. A man of great wisdom. Don't know if that's NFL wisdom, but college wisdom, he's got that in spades. But yeah, don't worry. Tyler throws the 4th turnover, which, by the way, I don't think it should be on him. The 4th turnover was just Antoine Winfield going fucking ham. Chris Olave catches a pass. Antoine Winfield runs over to him while he's still trying to wrangle the ball in, and he rips the ball out of his hands and runs off at the 50-yard line all the way to his own all the way to the other end zone. And they say he was down by contact again. So it was brutal. It didn't really feel like he was down by contact, but the refs called it that way, and there's nothing you can really do about that. Do I really need to keep explaining everything that happened in this game, or are you satisfied? The big takeaway from this one is the Bucs offense looks rough when they don't have Mike Evans, they don't have Chris Godwin Jr., they had an injured Emeka Egbuka, they had Tess Johnson. It was good. And when they don't have Bucky Irving, it was tough out there. They had Sean Tucker, who had his moments. He's been the guy who's doing the good job of filling the role of being the true running back. And now the Buccaneers are back into the Rachaad White zone, where they can't. They have to figure out at what points they're going to use Rachaad as a running back, and the other points where they're going to use him as a wide receiver who swings out and is just a guy who catches the ball out of the backfield, because he really struggles with the whole like running between the tackles part. But and not struggles, he just doesn't do it. So that's why Bucky eventually ended up as the starting running back, and even now, Rachaad White is losing carries to Sean Tucker, because Sean Tucker is a running back and Rachaad White is what is it? A wide back. That's the word. A wide back. That's what we call Debo, right? So, but yeah, the bye week for the Buccaneers could not come soon enough. This was a game that you can definitely give big props to the Buccaneers defense for making happen, especially after what happened on Monday Night Football versus the Lions. So that's all I'm going to talk about that game. That game was actually really sad to watch, because I was actually rooting for. All right, the Hawk to flight, the Falcon. Sorry, I was actually rooting for Spencer. I don't have any attachment to like the QB1 TV show or whatever people thought was happening, but I thought Spencer was actually playing pretty well, especially considering the situation being so bad, which is my follow-up question for the Saints. Like, what were you expecting? What did you think was going to happen? What did you think was going to happen this season? Because pulling a second-year quarterback in week 8 to put in a rookie quarterback makes it seem like you think that makes it seem like you think that you're supposed to be doing something right now and you're not. The Houston Texans played the San Francisco 49ers. This game was in the oh my category for me because it is yet another game where the Texans give you a glimpse of what they could look like if they had a good offensive line. So the 49ers were heavily injured, specifically across the defensive line. As we've talked about all season, pretty much every game that they play, somebody very important to their team gets hurt, and then they cannot play football very well. The Texans, being one of the best defenses, top 5, top 3, maybe top 2, maybe number 1. Depends on who you ask. Number 1 in my heart. They shut down Christian McCaffrey and absolutely mangled Mac Jones the entirety of this game. 26-15 does not give you a good example of how this game shook out. CJ Stroud pretty much got to throw to whoever he wanted to the vast majority of this game, which I'm sure made him feel fantastic. It is the most free he has looked. I will say this. There's a game this season where the Texans won 26-0, and they looked better in this game where they won 26-15 than that 26-0 game. So this is the best that their offense is. This is the best the offense has looked all season, and they played against a relatively good team led by Robert Saleh, who we know is a great really good defensive coordinator. So nothing really to take away from that except, man, that offense looked beautiful. Xavier Hutchinson, his 2 random weeks out of the season where he shows up and he scores a bunch of touchdowns. Nico Collins did not play in this game, which made it even more satisfying that the team was able to be successful. They got the ball to Jalen Higgins a bunch. Nico taking care of himself because he got concussed. Hopefully he'll be back this upcoming week, this upcoming Sunday. They're going to need him. This is the final game in the category. That's right, there was only one game in the This Is What We're Here For category this week, which is, I don't think that's ever happened, but this might be a show first. This is the best game of the entire week for me personally. It was the most entertaining game. This is the game that was most likely to have created fans for me personally as well. The score's deceptive. This game was close all the way through. I don't know. And it was really cool. It's always really cool on National Tight End Day to cap it off with a game where a tight end breaks his foot off in the ass of another team. So, shout out Tucker Kraft, this new young upstart tight end that the Green Bay Packers have. Is a young man by the name of Tucker Kraft. He's been balling out of fucking control, but in all seriousness, Tucker Kraft did the thing again. He's been doing it. He was actually doing it when Aaron Rodgers was still his quarterback, but he's still doing the thing where he leaks out of the backfield. He's still doing a great job of blocking up front to give pass protection, and also when you legitimately have your tight end sit back and run pass protection for your quarterback, it makes it even easier for when he does his block and release routes and turns into a receiver for him on the backside of plays. A lot of this game was, a lot of people have been talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers were washed. I saw a bunch of plays in this game where Jordan Love had to run outside the pocket and float the ball up into the air and hope his wide receivers would come down with it. And yes, he did have some absolute dimes, especially that huge one to Christian Watson, who, by the way, shout out Christian Watson. He's back. Did not know he was a One Piece fan. At one point, Christian has a massive catch, and he does Trafalgar Law's shambles move where he holds his hand out like this, and then he puts his fingers like that. It means a lot to me. Don't know if it means anything to you, but if you're a One Piece fan, apparently Christian Watson is too, and he's gotten pretty deep in the show if he knows about the whole Trafalgar Law thing. Watson's back. They've got Marcus Golden. They've got Tucker Kraft. They've got Josh Jacobs. They went up against a team that we know is good. Like, we know that the Pittsburgh Steelers are a good overall football team. If there was ever a team that you would say is average to above or slightly above average in the NFL, you would say it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. They might be the line of demarcation in terms of whether you determine if you're a good football team or not. And the Packers went out there and they handled business. Aaron Rodgers was under pressure vast majority of this game defensively because that's just how good the Packers defense is overall. But for the most part, the Steelers' plan kind of worked. Their objective was to not necessarily pressure Jordan Love. Obviously, the objective is always to get as many sacks as possible. But they dropped back and they wanted to increase the distance between Jordan Love's throwing location and where the ball could go. They wanted to increase the distance so they have a better read on where they have a better read with the secondary to go out there and get interceptions. It just didn't work. They were able to, one, get a bunch of underneath passes to Tucker Kraft, which is how he got a bunch of yards. They were able to get a bunch of underneath passes to Josh Jacobs. They found a way to get to the back end or get over the top of a good chunk of the second half zone defenses that the Steelers were running, and it burned them to get the Packers into the red zone quickly, and that was the biggest issue. Like the Steelers' biggest issue is their offense is not explosive right now. I don't know if it's because people have been watching the film and they know about DK and all this kind of stuff like that. Obviously, you should know about DK Metcalf. He's a really good wide receiver, but the fact of the matter is, every team in the NFL knows if you take away DK Metcalf, you've taken away the entirety of the pass offense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Congratulations. And this game was exemplified by that. The Packers are one of the better defenses in the NFL overall. They are right now a one-read pass offense, which is crazy. But Aaron Rodgers has been in that situation many times before. So, by the way, when I was listing off all the Packers' key players, I forgot to mention Romeo Doubs, also an important player. So, they look locked and loaded in this one. The fact that the Steelers were able to hang around this long gives me pause about how it feels like, because like once again, this was like a one possession game, vast majority of this game, and then the Packers broke off towards the end and did their thing. I think it's a great sign for the Steelers being a contender in the AFC North, because there's been few games where they've just been completely out of it. There's been a lot of games where you're shocked at how many points they give up, but the offense is typically there to match, right? That's what happened in this one. They are a team that culturally, historically, has prided itself on how good their defense is. When their defense has failed, their offense has been there most of the time to kind of even it out. Even when they played against the Bengals, that's basically what happened, right? Like they were going blow for blow with the Bengals after having like a couple of sputters where their offense wasn't working. One key thing that really kind of screwed him over in this one, Kenneth Gainwell had a fumble off of a check down, and they, like I said, other than the limitations early on in a lot of these games, like what happens is those first the first drive they look really good, and then the 3 drives after that they struggle to get like 5 yards, and it happens every game that they play. But the Packers, on the other hand, they don't look the prettiest when they're scoring, but somehow they always end up in the end zone. They have Josh Jacobs when they get into the red zone, so they get themselves in a situation where Jordan Love doesn't have to make all these crazy reads versus zone defenses. They have a bunch of wide receivers who are, one, fit multiple archetypes, like Romeo Doubs and Marcus Golden are 2 different types of wide receivers. Christian Watson, different type of wide receiver. He's like the stereotypical number 1 wide receiver. And now with Marcus Golden able to be the speedster guy, they could probably use him out of the slot, which makes him even deadlier. Tucker Kraft, receiving tight end, all this kind of stuff like that. They get more pieces to the puzzle as the season is going on. And this is the first time they've been a complete offense. This is Christian Watson's first game after ACL surgery. And they were able to go out there and put up 35 points. I feel a lot better about my Packers-Ravens Super Bowl pick with Jordan Love as the MVP. Although I will say my MVP pick, if I'm going to lose out off of the MVP, I want it to be Jonathan Taylor getting the MVP. That being said, I'm out of here, bro. I'm done talking into this microphone, into the void. You're done listening to me. I'm out of here. How long did it actually take us? We went 20 minutes over. I'm sorry, guys. Anyway, podcast's over. Have a great weekend. If you're watching this here, if you got anything you need to hit me up, tell me. Hit me up on Twitter, FB_playbook at the Ashton J. My goal is to start getting the podcast out earlier and earlier. It's also my goal to stop having to drink water in the middle of the episodes as well. Anyway, I'm going to go make some pizza rolls. You're going to go eat your vegetables, drink some water, stay hydrated. It's Halloween weekend. Stay safe out there. Don't drink and drive. Most importantly, keep the outfit sexy. If you live in Houston, take advantage of the cool weather on Friday for everybody. Anyway, I'm out. You know what to do. Go home, Roger.